The alarm horn blared across the bay, slicing through the evening silence so sharp and sudden that I nearly dropped the legal documents I was holding. Papers so covered in red stamps they looked like someone had tried to murder a stop sign. I'm standing there on my own damn dock, moon hanging low, wind cutting through me, and here come 3 Coast Guard patrol boats, engines growling, searchlights so bright they might as well be staring into my soul. You want to talk about a nightmare? Picture your name echoing off a megaphone in the dark. Mr. Sterling, you have 24 hours to vacate these premises or we'll be forced to take legal action. There's no warning, no conversation, just that voice, cold, calm, and way too familiar. Veronica Blackwood, wielding her authority like a weapon. Yeah, that happened. 3 weeks earlier, my world was a cramped Seattle apartment, bills stacked higher than the Space Needle, coffee gone cold on a wobbly drafting table. I'd just opened a letter from Morrison & Associates. We regret to inform you of the passing of your uncle, Reed Sterling, and right there, in black and white, it said I was now the sole owner of Sterling Point, a 15-acre island, and everything on it. Let me back up a sec. That island? It's not just dirt and trees. It's where I learned to fish, where my Uncle Reed spun stories about war and loyalty and what it means to protect your own. This island is family legacy, boy. Someday you'll need to protect it. Back then, I thought he was just being old and sentimental. I didn't get it. Not yet. So I packed what little I owned into my Honda, left behind the city's concrete squeeze, and drove north to claim my so-called birthright. The cabin was still the same, cedar shingles battered by 100 storms, big windows looking out over the water, the air thick with the smell of pine and something else, something like unfinished business. My uncle's study hadn't changed, either. Charts pinned to the wall, a collection of faded maps, a jar of coins that doubled as a swear jar and emergency fund. The only thing new? Behind a loose panel in his desk, I found a journal and a hand-drawn map littered with cryptic symbols and military jargon I couldn't begin to untangle. Did I mention that's when the real trouble started? Because the next morning, a yacht bigger than my college debt glided up to my dock. 3 suits and a woman with hair like polished steel step off like they owned the place. The woman, Veronica Blackwood, introduced herself as the chairman of the Marina Cove Homeowners Association, HOA for short. If you've ever tangled with an HOA, you know, nothing good ever follows that introduction. She was smooth, confident, all business. We need to discuss some rather serious violations, she said, pulling out a tablet loaded with photos of my dock, my cabin, my solar panels, each flagged as a code violation. 47 violations, to be exact. Fines totaling $89,000. The message was clear: sell or drown in paperwork. Now, I may not have been born yesterday, but I also wasn't going to let my uncle's warnings float away like an old fishing bobber. I've never seen any HOA in the property records, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Veronica just smiled, too patient, too rehearsed, and explained they'd only recently been established. To manage the chaotic situation, she said, which is code for, we're here to make your life hell. And if you're wondering why I didn't just call a lawyer and be done with it, trust me, I did. 3 of them. Not a single one could find Marina Cove HOA in any official document. That's when the paranoia set in. I started noticing things: a GPS tracker stuck to the underside of my dock, strangers taking photos of my basement door, even a drone buzzing overhead at night. Every time Veronica showed up, she had new so-called violations, more photos, more pressure to sell. Her crew wasn't just looking for reasons to find me. They were searching for something specific, something they weren't telling me about. You know what I mean? When the world stops making sense and every answer raises new questions, that's when you know you've stumbled into a story way bigger than yourself. So I decided to do some digging of my own. My first stop was Ted Brennan, my nearest neighbor and an old fisherman whose opinion of the HOA could fill a book. They did the same thing to the Kowalski family. Ted spat, not looking up from his tackle box, drove them off with fake fines, then let their place rot. Only, nobody ever moved in. The property just sat empty, like the real prize wasn't the land itself. That night, I went down into Uncle Reed's workshop. I always figured it was just for fixing boats, but behind a false wall, I found a steel safe. The combination? My uncle's birthday. Inside were World War II military maps, survey charts marked with coded symbols, and documents labeled classified. There was one map in particular, an underwater sketch showing what looked like the outline of a submarine, labeled U-534. At the bottom of the pile, a folder stamped Neptune's Trident Unit, naming my uncle as a commanding officer tasked with tracking German U-boats. And that's when things got wild. I started hearing noises at night, drilling sounds, flashes of underwater light near my dock. Someone was searching for something beneath the lake, and I had a sinking feeling it wasn't fish. Veronica changed tactics overnight. No more fines, no more threats. Instead, she brought in a so-called acquisition specialist and offered me $2 million to walk away quietly. 4 times what the property was worth. That's when you know there's more at stake than a pretty view. I wasn't about to give in, so I called a private investigator I knew from my Seattle days. Billy Hawthorne. Find me everything on Veronica Blackwood and her company. I told him, not really expecting him to turn up anything useful. Meanwhile, I got in touch with a naval historian who specialized in World War II intelligence, Dr. Benjamin Cross. Turns out, my uncle's unit was one of 12 secret observation posts along the Pacific Northwest, and mine was the only one that had ever detected a U-boat's final resting place. Together, Dr. Cross and I found a hidden entrance beneath the workshop, a passage leading to an underground vault. Inside were boxes labeled Bernstein Archive, stuffed with looted art, gold, and war documents, hundreds of millions in treasures stolen by the Nazis and stashed away for decades. Suddenly, all those bogus violations and late-night divers made a lot more sense. Veronica's fake HOA was just a front for a full-on treasure hunt, and my family's island was ground zero. Billy's report came in hot. Veronica was actually the CEO of a multinational salvage company with a history of acquiring artifacts under questionable circumstances. She'd used the same fake HOA scam on 7 other islands, buying up properties, then stripping them clean before abandoning them. But this time, the prize was bigger than anything she'd ever found. I tried to set a trap, luring Veronica into a conversation on her yacht while secretly recording her admitting to the whole scheme, searching for Nazi gold, manipulating families, using intimidation as leverage. Meanwhile, Billy was snapping photos of her crew loading up boats with military diving gear and enough hardware to invade a small country. The more I learned, the more dangerous it all became. Ted Brennan went missing. I found a note on my door, pinned with a combat knife. Sign over the property or your friend disappears. Yeah, that's how far they were willing to go. Then, just as things seemed darkest, the cavalry arrived. 3 Coast Guard boats, searchlights blazing, pulled up to my dock. The officer in charge was Elena Hayes, and if her handshake didn't convince you she meant business, the way she barked orders would. Turns out, her father had served with my uncle in the same World War II operation, and she'd been tracking Apex Maritime, Veronica's company, for months. She led me down into the deeper vaults beneath my uncle's cabin, where we found proof of a criminal enterprise that stretched across continents. Elena's plan was simple. Let Veronica's team think they were about to win, then catch them in the act. Only, we hadn't counted on them taking Ted hostage. What followed was the tensest negotiation of my life. Elena's team poised to strike. Veronica threatening to pull the trigger on a man who'd spent his whole life trying to mind his own business. All I could think about was what Uncle Reed would have done. And that's when I remembered the old defensive systems he'd installed, legacy security measures nobody but him and, apparently, Elena knew about. Using some quick thinking and a little luck, we activated the systems, triggering underwater alarms that sent Veronica's divers scrambling. In the chaos, the Coast Guard moved in. Elena rappelled onto the yacht like something out of a spy movie. Sharpshooters took down Veronica's security, and Ted made it out unharmed. As Veronica was dragged away in cuffs, she hissed, "You have no idea what you've started. They'll come for you." Maybe she was right, but honestly, for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel scared. I felt proud. 6 months later, I watched as Veronica got handed a 25-year sentence in federal court. Conspiracy, racketeering, cultural theft, extortion, the whole laundry list. The stolen art was returned to museums and synagogues. The families who'd been conned out of their homes got restitution. Elena took early retirement to run the Sterling Point Preservation Foundation, turning my uncle's legacy into a place where people could finally learn the real history hiding beneath the surface. Me? I found purpose, helping build a museum, running educational programs, and for the first time in my life, waking up with a sense of peace. The Kowalskis got their home back. Ted's now the unofficial mayor of the island, and kids come from all over to hear him tell stories about Nazi gold and the time the Coast Guard saved the day. Every sunset reminds me why some things are worth fighting for, not because they're valuable, but because they mean something. That's legacy. That's justice. And, you know, maybe that's the real American dream. So what do you think? Does money ever give anyone the right to take what isn't theirs? Or is there still room for the little guy to win when the odds are stacked sky high? Drop a comment. Tell me what you'd do if you were in my shoes. And if you believe that some things are worth protecting, no matter the cost, stick around. Because sometimes, the good guys do win.